Welcome, everyone, to the October meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor Gerard leads us in the pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Present.
Mr. Gerard? Here. Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Brock?
Here.
Mr. McDonald?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Vanslow? Mr. Dickinson?
Hang on, I lost my microphone. Did you do that, Doug?
I always do that, Dennis, you know that.
I'm here.
Mr. Merlino?
Here and on time.
Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Ms. Sieber, Here. Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Montesi?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our September board meeting, September 15. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes. Mr. Sokol on the motion to approve, second. Mr. Gerard on the second. Any further discussion regarding the minutes? Ms. Bramer?
I just have one note, thank you. I wanted to apologize to Amanda and her staff because I had made a comment about correcting a spelling error in one of our resolutions regarding the airport about avigation, but apparently that is the word. So I apologize, thank you. I don't see it anywhere in the minutes, but I wanted to point that out.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Made-
Ready for the
made a
question then? All those in favor of approving the minutes with the correct spelling of avigation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Report of the chairman. It's been an extremely busy month with budget matters and meetings. On September 19th, I attended a meeting that was organized by Sheriff York regarding the planning going forward in terms of rescue squads. He brought up the sheriff, I believe, from Albany County. I believe it was Albany County. I made a very interesting presentation, and I think we're bringing the sheriff back to actually do the presentation for a larger group. They have an interesting program down there, and one that I think everyone needs to be informed about. Later that afternoon, I attended a meeting that was organized regarding the Hudson Black River Regulating District at Half Moon, the town of Half Moon. Basically, they were presented some information dealing with the kind of upgrades they're going to have to do to their dam facilities with, obviously, the question of where's that money going to come from. We suggested to them at the meeting that we believe that the entire regulating district should be a state responsibility, not a regional or county responsibility, as are other drainage districts in the state. There are a number of state representatives that were present, and I think they heard us loud and clear. On September 20, I attended county committee meetings, county facilities, public works. On the 26th, again, attended various committee meetings, and 28th as well, personnel, higher education, and finance. The end of 29th. On October 2nd, I met with Mr. Ellis at his request regarding railroad matters. October 5, I attended the 3rd annual SALT Summit in Ticonderoga, organized by the SAVE Coalition and led by the fund. It was very interesting. It was the 3rd annual SALT Summit. A number of supervisors were there, and I have to tell you, I think that we're making great strides in our plan to try to reduce the amount of salt that's finding its way into our waters and into the environment. That afternoon, I attended a meeting here regarding our audited financial statements, and I'm sure the county treasurer at an appropriate time will fill you in on that. But I think it's fair to say that the audit shows the county in very good financial shape. On October 13th, I attended a special meeting of the Public Works Committee that was organized to listen to those that wanted to address the board regarding railroad matters. And on October 17th, I attended the Personnel Committee meeting. And that concludes my report. Reports by committee chairman, past month's meetings or activities. We'll start with Mr. Gerard.
Just a couple of things. We went with Jeff Tennyson and Ross Dewberry, the airport manager, to our annual meeting with the FAA as they lay out their financial considerations for the up-and-coming years. Meeting went very well. We expressed the fact that there was interest in the hydrology as we move forward and the environmental assessment. They said that they're working with the EPA, the DEC, and Army Corps, and that they would be conferencing, calling, and discussing the forward movement. And they say that it's pretty close to getting resolved there, so we'll know where we're at with that shortly, and the funding sources. So the meeting went well. They're very supportive of what we're doing, and every year that we go down in October, and they have to map out where their money's going and how they allocate it. So it's a very important meeting, and I think we're in a good position to get our funding when everything lines up. The courts are moving along fine. Supervisor Montesi will probably bring us up to stuff on that. He's been our liaison, checking with the contractors, et cetera, but he hasn't called saying that there's been any problems, and everything I hear is good. The Ring Road, I believe, is going to be open here shortly, which will alleviate a lot of problems. And I attended the Cornell Cooperative annual meeting at Highland Park last night, and I just wanted to say that, I'll be retiring from that, and I think 10 years ago I was fortunate enough to be put on that committee, and it's one of the finest things that I've been able to attend. I think as the president said last night, Woody Green, I think I got more out of it than I gave. They're a wonderful organization with some great people and do some fabulous work, and I've really been proud the last 10 years to work with them. So thank you, Dr. Seelig. That's it.
Thank you. Supervisor McDevitt.
Just one brief comment. As chairman of the Economic and Growth Committee in this county, before I leave this board, I would hope to be personally responsible for bringing some sort of high-tech, sustainable, long-term industry to this county. Now, I clearly have not done that, but that is my goal for the future. Following, maybe economic developments in this country, one of the issues that I've been following is Amazon in their efforts to secure a new high-tech warehousing facility in this country. Many communities throughout this country are competing for that. One of those is Chicago. They've done a new facility on Staten Island. They have headquarters in New York City. So they're out there kicking the tires. It seems to me going forward, and I just maybe make one general statement: the railway systems in this country that this county and this board ought to be concerned with and should encourage is high-speed rail. That's where the future is. Very expensive, but high-speed rail connecting New York City to Montreal. That ought to be our motivation and our interest as far as rail. And I leave that statement on the table because that's the direction we ought to be going in and thinking about. Thank you.
Supervisor Brammer.
Thank you, Chairman. With permission of Supervisor Brock, I'd like to give the Environmental Concerns and Real Property Committee report. We met on September 18th, and we have 3 resolutions in your packet today, 384, 385, and 386. The first 2 deal with property that we're going to be authorizing sold to the town of Lake Luzerne. It was owned by an estate, and they were basically roads that the town would like to own. And then the third resolution there, 386, there was a request from a landowner regarding their taxes and asking us for a refund, but under the law, it was not a correctable error, so we were not able to grant that request. I do understand that they went to their assessor and were able to work out a resolution at the local level, so we were glad about that. And the last thing I'd like to report on is that I do have a new resolution for the storage of rail cars in the Adirondack Park. We have Resolution 423 that was passed with almost full support of the Finance Committee, aside from Supervisor Dickinson. However, there is some language in that Resolution 423 that was concerning to the county attorney and to others. and some items in that resolution that would probably be better discussed in more detail in committee and in smaller group meetings before coming to the full Board of Supervisors. Nonetheless, there is still broad support, I believe, on the board for a resolution opposing rail car storage in the Adirondacks and for supporting and standing beside our sister county, Essex County. So I have prepared a new resolution. It's on your desks, and when I am told by Amanda that it's the appropriate time to make that motion to bring it to the floor, I will.
Then why don't we consider that a motion then, to bring it to the floor? We don't need a waiving of the rules. It has been prepared and placed in front of you. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Beatty on the second. All in favor of bringing this to the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. We'll bring it to the floor. Mr. Sokol, do you have any thoughts regarding 423?
Well, at this point, I would like to withdraw 423. I think we can also take back to finance contractual items as well. I think we need to take a look at that, as I mentioned at the last meeting. Hopefully, we can get some more definitions on that and answer some more questions. But at this point, I would entertain Supervisor Brammer's resolution.
So we have a motion by Chairman of Finance. This was originally came through Finance to withdraw 423. Is there a second to that motion to withdraw? Mr. McDonald, second to the motion to withdraw 423. Any discussion regarding the withdrawal? There being none, I'll ask the question. All those in favor of withdrawing 423 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the number on the new resolution is
It will be 426.
426. Thank you.
Do we all have copies of that?
We only have 14.
No, it was given to us this morning. Put it on your desk.
424.
It's not in the folder. It should.
Handed out separately.
It was handed out separately. You should have it at your desk.
424, not 26.
No,
426.
426 is the new resolution.
426 is the new resolution. It would show it as a blank on what's in front of you. You can pencil in 426 on that. That's the number. Thank you.
Inadvertently threw it in the garbage.
Does that conclude your report, Supervisor Brammer?
It does, thank you.
Supervisor Brock?
I have none, thank you.
Supervisor McDonald?
As I chair a committee, I do not have a committee report. Thank you.
Supervisor Frazier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health, Human, and Social Services met on September the 25th. As it is that time of year, the budget, each one of the department heads presented their budgets to the committee, explaining what they were looking for the next year. We had the opportunity to ask questions, so all of the departments that came under Health, Human, and Social Services presented those. We did have resolutions that came out of the meetings, and you will see those in your packet, 401 through 408. We have first one authorizes an agreement with Saratoga Warren Washington Workforce Development Board for a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. 402 authorizes the chairman to execute documents related to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. 403 authorizes the director of the Employment and Training Administration to enter into and execute memorandums of understanding with various youth services. Resolution 404 authorizes an agreement with the Council for Prevention to provide leadership training and mentoring to youth enrolled in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. 405, accepting funds from the Adirondack Rural Health Network to Warren County, again to the Department of Public Health, and authorizing the chairman of the board to send a letter of appreciation. Resolution 406 authorizes an agreement with Southern Adirondack Independent Living to provide Title 3D health promotion programs to residents of Warren County for the Office of the Aging. 407 amends the resolution number 506 of 216, which was amended by resolution number 49 of 217, which authorizes agreements with various organizations for additional services. And then finally, resolution 408, further amending resolution number 321 of 2017 to change the effective date for the deletion of the resource assistant number 2 in the Department of Social Services and ratify the actions of the acting county administrator. And then on September 26th, support services met again Each of the departments was there, the Department of Weights and Measures, Purchasing Agent, County Auditor, IT, Board of Elections, County Attorney, County Clerk, and Clerk of the Board. All of them, again, presented their budgets to us, so if we had questions, we could kind of get those squared away. And then out of those meetings, we have 3 resolutions for support services. We have Resolution 389, which amends the Warren County plans and policies to include revisions to the Warren County purchasing policy. 390, which amends Resolution number 158 of 2017 that authorizes out-of-state travel. 391, declaring 17, 19-inch Colby DVD television surplus, and we authorize the donation of these televisions to nonprofit organizations. Finally, I would just like to say it's been my pleasure to have worked with all these department heads while we've been doing evaluations, budget, and the committee meetings. And I just kind of like to give them a pat on the back because I think we have some pretty great people who work for us. And when you work closely with these different things like the evaluations and the budgets, you realize just how hard they do work for Warren County. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DPW Public Works met on September 20th. Out of that meeting, we have 3 resolutions. 409, which is establishing a petty cash fund for the Parks, Recreation, and Railroad in the amount of $150. Resolution 410 is authorizing an agreement with Greater Glens Falls Transit to utilize Up Yonda Environmental Center as a trolley stop. And we also have Resolution 411, awarding a bid to for a fuel farm upgrade in Warrensburg. And then we had a second special meeting on October 13th with Ed Ellis and Justin Gagne from Saratoga North Creek Railroad to hear from them on their plans of the storage of the tanker cars in the Adirondacks and also their plans moving forward in 2018. That was a lengthy meeting, and I'm sure we're going to hear some more from Mr. Ellis today. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
Occupancy tax has 2 resolutions in your packet. They're basic bookkeeping. They're for monies allotted to certain festivals, and for reasons they changed a little bit. So they're in there. I would also like to say that Chairman Conover made me chair of the OCTAX committee and told me he wasn't doing me any favors. He was absolutely right, beyond any shadow of a doubt. But I have to tell you, I have enjoyed it. I've lived all my life in Lake George and have been intimately familiar with tourism in all its aspects. I have completed the preliminary budget for occupancy tax. It's involved. I've spoken to you, a lot of you, about certain aspects of it. We have changed it drastically. We've set up a list of 8 events that we have every year that come to the county. So it's a county list. We'll no longer have the free-for-all with applications from all over the county. We'll just have those 8. They will be reviewed every year. But basically, they'll come to the county and we'll roll them over and distribute the money. The rest of the money has been redistributed, mostly to the towns. In my endeavors doing the budget, I would like to thank Chairman Conover, a specialist in money, Supervisor and County Administrator Garrity, Supervisor and Budget Officer Frank Thomas, and I'd also like to thank Supervisor Sokol McDonald, and especially Jean Merlino, who has been very helpful. And lastly, I'd like to thank my cousin Lisa Grant for all her input and help, as well as all the other people I've pestered and bothered about this budget. I'd like to thank all the business people I've had the pleasure of having intercourse with, discussing issues that they all have. It's been an interesting experience. You get 20 business people, you get 20 different opinions about what they want to do with the money. But it's been very rewarding, I think, and I think we've worked out the major kinks. I have met several times with Ed Moore and his posse. It's very difficult to argue with all that brain power. But fortunately, I'm stubborn, so I'm not confused by facts. We have, in the coming year, 2018, allotted them the $250,000 that they've been getting for the last 3 years. They've done an excellent job. They've turned the place around. It's a vote of confidence to extend the 250 for another year, and we hope to extend it 2 more and get them on their feet and determine exactly what they need to continue to operate the Civic Center. It's a valuable asset, not only to Warren County, but the region, and they've done a wonderful job, and for that, we really appreciate it. I've also listened to the business people. They touted a plan that a lot of you heard called, I believe it's the Lake George Tourism Plan. It's a great plan. It's got a lot of interesting information in it, and it's got some very valid points in it. My primary issue is what they wanted to do was take all the money on January 1st. And I thought to myself, here's all these business people. I said, who thought that up? Geez, we have obligations. We have outstanding obligations. We can't do that by January 1st. But I did glean from that report that their major concern was having a CVB, a standalone CVB, have control of some of the OCTAX money. And it's a citizens, it's Convention Visitors Bureau. And they wanted to establish a new one. And I decided, since I was contacted by the Lake George Regional Chamber, that's not the town chamber, it's a regional chamber. They have 460 members, most of whom are not in Lake George town. I was contacted by them. They've recently hired Gina Metzner, who was here today, and to replace Mike Consulo. And they, of course, have Kristen Hannafin and Amanda May from used to be the Post-Star. They're all working in the CVB part of the chamber, and they were wishing to bolster the funds for that CVB and attempt to establish the CVB and grow it. They originally asked for $400,000. I was able to squeeze, with great assistance from Supervisor Merlino, $300,000 out for them. I also dedicated $50,000 of the additional OCTAC funds that the town of Lake George gets to this proposal. I think it's valid. I believe in it, and I've therefore invested town monies in it. Mr. Merlino has also made available some labor help from the tourism department. So the CVB will be working hand in hand with the tourism department. We're hoping to get them in a facility that'll make it easier for them to deal with the tourism department. If there's room available in the building, we'd like to get them down here. Now, they are an independent CVB. They're not in any way controlled by the county. So that's where the money is, and that's what we're doing with the occupancy tax, and I'd be happy to discuss any of this with any of you in greater detail. So I really appreciate, again, everyone's help, and hopefully we're headed in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Dixon. I'm sure there'll be much more discussion. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism has a 379. It's just the final bid on Wellsworth printing for our 2018 brochure, and 380 is to have the application sent to for the matching funds to the state of New York, and also with the name of the change on that, as Joanne Conley is our chairman. I think all supervisors have gotten a version of a press release that the tourism department has sent out, and we're going to be working with a few papers to get some information into the papers. As far as demand this year, as of September, the demand for room nights are up 1.8%. Balloon Festival week happens to be up 6.5%. So that's a healthy number for a four-day event. According to the last numbers that I received on occupancy tax as of the end of September is up 1.9%. And, excuse me, that's occupancy, right, and sales tax is up 1.7%. Under traffic safety, there's just two resolutions in your packet. 392 is to ratify that the chairman of the board place an application for grant funding to the state for Stop DWI. And the other one is a ratification of a chairman of the board to send an application to the state of New York to ratify the state DWI. And that's the only other comment I have. I think Mr. Dickinson really went out of his way to work with a lot of people and get some changes and get this all moving forward in the right direction. And I wish the CVB board a lot of luck. We'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merlino. Mr. Stroud, Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, the Legislative and Rules Committee met on September 26, 2017, and the primary discussion was proposal number 3, which is coming before us November 7th. The board unanimously approved the resolution to support resolution proposal number 3, and you'll see that today. It's Resolution 383 in your package today. And that proposal number 3, is to create a land account with 250 acres of forest preserve, which would be land eligible to towns, villages, and counties as alternatives to using forest preserve land to address specific public health and safety concerns. For example, this allocation of land could be used for bicycle trails, public utility lines, and so forth, or maybe even a bridge in the town of Horicon. So Proposition 3 would eliminate the time-consuming and costly bureaucratic process for completing important road maintenance, utility installations, bicycle path creations, and so forth. So that resolution, I urge you to please join us in supporting that as we progress forward to the election. Just one other comment. Last night, I too attended the Cornell Cooperative Extension's annual meeting and volunteer recognition. The Cornell Cooperative Extension's contribution to our quality of life in our county is wonderful in many, many ways. I wish to thank Dr. Seeley and his staff and the board of directors and the volunteers and Supervisor Gerard, as well as my friends Woody Green and Ken Mingus. And Willa Hogan did a great job as Master of Ceremonies. So that was a wonderful evening, and again, thanks to all involved with that. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the committees that I chair, you'll take a look at resolutions 412, 413, and 425. 413 talks about a contract to retain legal counsel that came out of our personnel meeting. 425 is about the Medicare Advantage rates. I want to highlight just for 1 minute what's been going on with personnel. Personnel has worked very hard with our benefits in terms of our new contract with Jager and Flynn. We, in fact, are in open enrollment right now. That open enrollment continues until October 27th. Because of our efforts as a board in working with both HR and with Matt Schuett, what we've been able to come up with is a very streamlined process for all of our employees to sign up for their benefits during open enrollment. So you should all be very pleased to know that 60% of our employees to date have signed up for their benefits. It's a great number. And also, we have an opportunity now to offer an additional vision plan at full cost to the employee, but it's a very minimal cost that gives them additional options for their vision coverage. They also have an option to now participate in telemed. Telemed is an exciting new opportunity that hopefully will also encourage people to come in and apply to our county so that they can be on, whether it be their phone, their iPad, a computer, and call in, and with a sick child at home, instead of bringing that child into the ER or an emergency center, they're able to have a quick look from a doctor and a prescription for those that are out of town. That's very helpful as well. So we're excited to offer telemed, again, at no cost to the employee. And our online internet forms are working very well. People are now reviewing documents and different options that are available to them. So that's a big positive in the world of HR, and we really need to thank our HR staff who have worked so hard to make that happen. Also, this past Tuesday, we had a lengthy discussion regarding the application process for both the county attorney and the county administrator. And, you know, we're very pleased to report we have 5 potential candidates that we are pre-screening as potential applicants for the county attorney position. Those interviews should start taking place sometime in mid-November. So our HR department's been very busy working on making sure that we've started that process. As it relates to the county administrator, the committee decided to continue to receive applications up until November 10th, again with the goal of hoping to do some interviews towards the end of November. So we are still seeking any applications for the county administrator position, but have also started a pre-screening process there. On Tuesday, again, a busy day, but we also had our airport advisory group, which is once again a subsection of the facilities group that have been put together for almost a year now to provide technical advice and a community input as it relates to the airport. The main goal being to have an active and respectful dialogue as it relates to the FBO contract and going out for this, what is now an RFP process. I think that's been very effective, and we've had some really good conversations between all of the members there. They are looking forward to seeing, hopefully, a draft lease that would accompany the RFP. And so with any luck, we'll have that from the working group to go to facilities and then to airport advisory for any type of technical input and advice there. They were encouraged, and again, to encourage the public for any questions, concerns, or comments regarding that process to reach out through DPW or that working group. Wayne Lamont did come and answered questions and provided an update on what's been going on with that group. So in terms of my committee reports, that's my report, Mr. Chairman, and at the appropriate time, I do have a couple roll calls as well. Thank you.
Supervisor Beatty. No committee report, but I would like to thank the hundreds and hundreds of people that stood in line for hours to pay respect to one of our area's greatest and classiest Native Sons Day Streeter. I saw numerous people from this board there that I want to thank you very much. We all know he was a special man and just a real positive advocate for these Adirondacks, and almost every broadcast he would say something positive about Glens Falls or Queensbury or whatever, and that's what he thought of this area. So thanks, Dave, and thanks to everybody here for showing up. Thanks.
Supervisor Montesi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Criminal justice, there are 6 resolutions, primarily 396, 97, 98, 99, and 400. They deal with the DA and asking for grants that are available from the state, public defender's office, and there's a, for the sheriff, there's a technology contract that we need to sign to update some of the sheriff's concerns. There is a letter that I have passed out for each supervisor that talks about the nighttime arraignment that we're working on. This is critical that each supervisor contact their justice and make sure that they're on board with this concept, and get your town board to okay this as a resolution, and try to get it back to me before the middle of November, because I need to get this to Judge Hobbs, who will get this down to Albany, and our application is complete except for this bit. And once we get that, then we'll know whether or not the state is going to grant us the dollars to do this program. Construction on the courthouse is proceeding along very well. Again, we're ahead of schedule, ahead of budget, or not above budget, but and that's good. There haven't been very many change orders, so we're moving along very well. There was a room that was designed, one of the courthouses. What we did is we used the wood that's going to be used in the final courthouse. We set up the judge's bench. We put the lights that are going to be used, the type of ceiling tile. So it was kind of a mock-up model. Maybe half the room was done that way, and everyone that had concerns walked through it. I know our DPW fellas did, and also the judge and his staff, their staff. So that's moving along very well, and I think, Kevin, on the 30th or the 31st is the EMS meeting.
October 31st at 10 a.m. in
Okay,
this
at
room.
10 a.m. there'll be an EMS meeting, very important meeting. Again, the sheriff from Albany is coming up and will explain this kind of regional concept and something very important because it will probably give us the ability to have 24/7 coverage for ALS.
Right. This meeting was requested by Senator Little's office. There'll be Essex County, Clinton County, and potentially one other county supervisors here to listen to the Albany County proposal that's been in place down there for several years. And it's a good presentation. They are running EMS out of Albany County Sheriff's Department now. It seems to work very well. It's an optional service, but I would behoove all the supervisors and anybody from the public wants to hear about this, they should come that day at 10 o'clock.
And Amanda, if and when the supervisors return these resolutions, would you compile them for me and then we can get them down to the DA?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Montesi. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance met on September 28th. Resolutions 377, the revised copy of 378, 414 through 418, 422, and 423 are in your packet for consideration. We had a very light agenda this month. Most of these resolutions are increases, decreases, or establishing capital projects. 423 we already addressed when that came forth out of executive. I was in favor of it, but now reconsidering, I think it was pretty broad. So what Supervisor Bramer has come up with, I think, is a much better resolution, and I thank you for that. So we will be discussing that on 423. As far as the county treasurer's report, he's been out of commission. He had he had knee replacement surgery, so he's been out of the office, but I'm sure he will be sprinting up next month to do a report. A couple of other items, I would like to just echo what Supervisor Frazier had mentioned about the staff, and I was chairman at once of those departments, and we want to talk about some tough departments, and we're always talking numbers up here and trying to, crunch things, and sometimes you need to take a perspective and look at CPS. You need to look at public health, and these people do not have easy jobs, so you have very, very tough committees there, so I appreciate that. And also, I too was at Dave Strader's tribute, which was amazing. The pictures and the family themselves are just a quality family. I employed all boys at my business at one point, and it's just nice to see them all grown up, and it was just a shame. He was a wonderful man. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. October. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The soon-to-be proposed 2018 county budget is nearing completion. There's 3 or 4 outstanding items that we're chasing around. One of my main goals with the 2018 budget was to incorporate the debt service for the courtrooms and for the NSTEM project and get revenue behind that expense. We managed at this point to cover about 76% of the debt service, which totally is 1.45 million. So we have about 1.1 million covered by revenue in the budget. That leaves approximately 425,000 for fund balance. So the 2019 budget, 2020 budget will hopefully take care of that. I'm very pleased that we managed to accomplish that. I think that's very important. I think without without getting revenue behind that expense, the county will have problems in future years with their fund balance. There is a 2.9% raise for non-union employees. There's a few salary adjustments, I would say less so than in previous years. And also, there will be a budget committee meeting a week from today. I have a few more details, a lot more details about the budget. And the following Friday on 11/3 is a special board meeting where I will propose a 2018 county budget. One thing is the sales tax. If it stays where it is at 1.7% or goes up to 2%, the county will be doing very well. That's my report.
Thank you, Frank. Supervisor Hyde.
Thank you, no report.
Thank you. Report by the county administrator. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me, Supervisor Leggett.
That's okay. Since I chair no reports, I have no committees. I have no reports.
Thank you. Report by the county administrator.
First, I'd like to recognize Terry Jeffords, 35 years of service in Warren County Sheriff's Department. She's held various positions, and now she is an investigator, so congratulations to Terry. I've attended numerous meetings. I'm not going to go through them because everybody's stated their meetings this past month. But I would also, you know, I know Supervisor Frazier attended a lot of the performance evaluation meetings, and I would like to thank all the supervisors who participated. We did rate our employees this year. Supervisor Seaver, I got, you know, she latches onto something and does a very good job and held our feet to the fire to be there to get these evaluations done. I think it's paying off. When we looked at our first evaluations in the spring, we had some that, you know, we discussed and we needed to pick up performance, and I think that we saw a pickup in performance by numerous of our department heads. And as Supervisor Frazier said, they do an excellent job here, and it does go unnoticed. And a lot of times the county gets beat up about different things that don't go right, but behind the scenes you have people coming to work every day doing the best job they can, and it showed when we did their evaluations this year, and they're going to be rewarded for that, whether it be slight reward, but that's the way they do it in private enterprise, and that's the way we're going to do it here. So the kudos to the Performance Evaluation Committee. We got through it the first year. We need to keep it going. We want to take it down on a different level going forward. We want to go a little bit deeper into the departments and give incentive for give it more incentive for people to come in and really perform to the highest level going. As Ron said, I think the EMS meeting is important. The way Albany County, you need to come and listen to it, and if it's something for your community, it's good. If it's something that's not for your community, you don't have to participate. But I can tell you right now, we're at a crossroads with EMS across the county. And on a lighter note, I will have some things to say about the railroad resolution, but on a lighter note, I know that oxy tax is up and sales tax is up. But when I looked at the sales tax report that came out this last quarter, I found it very telling that Bone Landing, Lake George, and Lake Luzerne all had increases in the sales tax, and the rest of us went down. So what does that tell you? You got the oxy tax chairman, the tourism chairman, the chairman of the board doing better than the rest of us. They're falling a little bit.
Bravo.
I'm not casting aspersions.
Here.
You should get a copy of the report. That's my report.
Just shows that it's working, Kevin.
Mr. Chairman, though, I think the supervisor from Warrensburg, maybe if he promotes his town a little bit more and spends some of his
you're gonna
tax
bring
like we do on promotion and getting people into our town, maybe his sales tax will go up too.
Thank you, everyone, I think.
The numbers don't lie, Gene.
Now a report by the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to report.
We have no report by the county attorney. Reading of communications.
Report of criminal and family workloads for August 2017 from the Warren County Probation Department, Warren County Department of Weights and Measures monthly report for September 2017, Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. Financial reports dated June 30, 2017 and July 31, 2017. Minutes from the Warren, Washington County IDA Executive Park Committee dated September 13, 2017 and September 18, 2017. And the CDC minutes for August 22nd, 2017. From the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp., we received August 2017 surcharge check in the amount of $6,541, and the 2017 second quarter benefit district check in the amount of $4,138. Town of Queensbury, we've received a copy of an application to the Office of the New York State Comptroller for the establishment of the Cary Road Sanitary Sewer District, and also a notice of public hearing regarding adoption of the 2017 South Queensbury Avenue Sewer District Benefit Tax Roll. That public hearing will be held on Monday, September 25th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the Queensbury Activities Center located on Bay Road in Queensbury, New York. From Drescher and Malecki, LLP, Certified Public Accountants, we have the Warren County financial statements and required reports for the year ended December 31, 2016. Hamilton County Resolution Number 248 of 2017, which supports the statewide ballot proposal number 3. Washington County Resolution Number 199 of 2017, approving the contract between Adirondack Community College and the Educational Support Personnel Association, and a letter of resignation from Maureen Schmidt, Commissioner of the Department of Social Services, for a resignation effective January 24, 2018.
Thank you. Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolutions number 377 through 421 were mailed. Proposed resolution number 378 was amended after mailing. The revised resolution was emailed to the board and posted to the county website last week. A copy of the revised resolution is in your folders, and a motion is needed to approve the amendments.
Motion on the revision. Ms. Bramer, second. Mr. Sokol. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, proposed resolutions number 422 through 425 were approved after the mailing. Copies were emailed and posted to the website last week. A motion is needed to bring proposed resolution numbers 422 through 425 to the floor.
Motion to bring 422 through 425 to the floor. Mr. Montesi on the motion. Mr. Stroud, Supervisor Stroud on the second. Ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, now I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to address any resolutions presently before the board may do so. Ed?
Thank you, folks. On behalf of my name is Ed Moore, on behalf of the Civic Center Coalition, which operates the Cool Arena, and our general manager, Jeff Mead, which you've gotten to know. We're very proud of him. He's done a great job. We sincerely thank you for your support for the Civic Center, the OCTAX Committee, and the whole board here. We believe you supported something that's been quite amazing. We're working very hard to continue to show favor to your support and keep it a great venue for our region. This year, we're going to have over 90 events here, and, you know, like Doug just mentioned, you know, Dave Strader passed, and the Deneen family passed, and how sad those events were, but the recognition to that old community, that old venue down there that was so vital all those years ago, and would not be there today if the likes of you folks did not support this. It's true. Without that 250, we wouldn't be here. And we continue to hope that you will support this. And like I said to Supervisor Conover one day, I said, you know, 3 years ago you favored us with this, and it's like a baby just starting to walk. And we're just starting to walk now. We're not quite 3 years old. And if you didn't support us, it would be like taking a baseball bat, knocking us out. We'd never be able to walk again. So, you know, we really appreciate it. We thank you for that. And that's all we have to say, and we'll do our damnedest to continue. There's a great board, great group of people, and we will do our damnedest to keep it going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board? Mr. Ellis.
Chairman Conover, thank you. You allocated 5 minutes. I actually figured out how to work the timer on my phone, so if you hear chimes, that means the 5 minutes are up, and I'll turn it on in 3 or 4 minutes. I have a short PowerPoint presentation, and I'm Ed Ellis. I'm president of Saratoga North Creek Railway. Just so I know who my audience is, how many of you have actually ridden the train on the Saratoga North Creek? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, turned it on. There it goes. I'm going to go through the first couple slides quickly. This presentation has been provided to the clerk, and so if you want to look at it later on and read more about it, you can do that. But it's sort of a summary at the beginning of what we've done, how many people we've carried, how much rental we've paid, the kinds of services we provide, some photos of the rolling stock that we use and what we do. The line was bought, the part in Warren County in 1997. Warren County invested about $600,000 in it of the $2.2 million, and then there were subsequent federal grants of $10 million, plus the town of Corinth spent $7 or $8 million, and we've put in $5.5 million. So there's about $24 million in the railroad between Saratoga, North Creek, and Tahawus, and we've carried 225,000 people. Here are some of the things that we've done. There's no subsidy from the county. In fact, as I said, we pay rental to the county. There's been a lot of discussion about the storage, and as everybody knows, we've been unprofitable. This is sort of a timeline of how the storage opportunity came up and what we talked about. And then on March 28, 2016, we came to this board, and I committed not to store hazardous cars on the Tahawus line, but we made it clear that we would continue to store cars. The board approved the contract, and since that time we've had outbound cash flow of over $1.5 million. I did notice that I was out on the track yesterday, and the track is still in good shape. So we're committed, and we keep looking for approaches that will make the line work. I agree with Mr. McDevitt that high-speed rail is the wave of the future, and every successful high-speed rail line in the world has feeder lines where people who live in rural areas are able to get to the high-speed line. This is the only line in this region, this line that we operate. So what we've done this year is we have a new partnership with Stony Creek Ranch. I was up with Justin, we met with them yesterday. We have a new Christmas train theme that is a whole lot less expensive than Polar Express, and we're continuing development of storage customers. And I want to point out, here's what the train looks like. It's one of the finest trains in America. Here's what storage cars look like. Upper left is a former coal gondola. Upper right is a tank car. Next, covered hopper cars, a smaller tank car, which is primarily used for corn syrup and other heavier, denser commodities, open hopper, and the bottom picture is the picture of the cars that are in storage in the middle of a siding in the middle of nowhere. I was disappointed in some of the news organizations that characterized them as oil tankers. They are not actually oil tankers any more than the Tupperware dish in my drawer is a chili container because it last had my wife's wonderful chili in it. Once I run it through the dishwasher and clean it, it's simply a Tupperware container, and those are simply tank cars. They're not oil tankers. So we have a long-term rail strategy, and when I say we, I mean the people in this room, the town of Corinth, and me. Substantial effort to preserve rail. You guys made an investment. The town of Corinth made an investment. You're looking to grow tourism. They need a replacement for international paper. If we were to build that rail line today, the replacement cost of that rail line is $600 million to $1 billion. You guys and the town stepped back financially, and we took on that burden, and we take the duty to preserve and maintain the rail line very seriously. We've worked very hard at it over the last several years. Good public policy is not always universally admired. The picture is of a homeless shelter that we're building in my hometown. And a lot of people were opposed because they didn't want their daughters to see homeless people on the street. They wanted them to go somewhere else. But the village president said, you know what, it's good public policy, and we're going to do it. When I first came here, the first person I talked to was Sterling Goodspeed, who was the town of Johnsburg supervisor at that point. And he said, you know, we're doing this because we can't imagine how important it might be. I think that's still true. So I'm happy to work with you to look for alternative funding mechanisms. And our plan is to continue to creatively develop tourism, work on freight development, use storage as a medium-term financial underpinning, work with the town of Corinth and the First Wilderness people, and work with you on new funding mechanisms. I know you have a resolution. I haven't read it, obviously, but my request is that you would put this on the table until you've had an opportunity to talk to your partner, the town of Corinth, and me, and come up with a solution that works for everyone. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has one.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board regarding proposed resolutions? There being no, Justin?
Morning, everybody. I normally address you as the general manager of the Saratoga North Creek Railway. Today I'm addressing you as Justin Gagno, resident of the town of Johnsburg. I graduated from Johnsburg Central School in 2003. To my knowledge, I'm one of 2 of my classmates that chose to stay in the town of Johnsburg and attempt to earn a living. And I say attempt to earn a living because if you haven't lived in a small town, sometimes it is an attempt to earn a living, and you have to go from job to job. Currently, Iowa Pacific employs 7 employees in the town of Johnsburg, not including myself. The average salary of those employees is around $20 an hour. I understand that there is a need to protect the Adirondack Park. I lived in the Adirondack Park my entire life. I love biking, I love skiing, I love rafting, I love hiking, I love all the activities that the Adirondacks are all about. There is also a need to protect jobs in the community and protect economic development in communities. You may be thinking to yourself, Justin, you lay off employees in the wintertime. You're absolutely right, we have. As have nearly all businesses in the Adirondacks. At some point during the year, they find a time period where they are not busy and they have to lay off people, and those employees are forced to go find other part-time jobs to subsidize their living. The only way that a business in the Adirondack Park can sustain if you're based entirely on tourism, because tourism goes up and it goes down, is to find alternative sources of income, which is exactly what Iowa Pacific has done. So I'm speaking as a resident of North Creek because I know that Iowa Pacific provides a benefit to the town of North Creek. Those residents pay taxes, those residents shop locally, and those residents are able to provide for their families, including my own. So I know there's been a number of projects that have come up over the years in the town of Johnsburg that have been opposed. One of them was to put windmill power on the backside of Gore Mountain. It was very similar to the project that we're talking about with storage cars. The windmills were going to be out of view of the general public. It was going to provide green power to the town. It seemed like something that everybody should be able to get behind, and for some reason it was voted down. So when a company comes along, and I understand that my words may be viewed as very biased because I work for the company, so I'll just sum it up with this. If a company comes along and they have a proposal on the table that is going to benefit Warren County, jobs in Warren County, and the residents of Warren County, it's following all of the laws, all of the protocols, and all of the procedures that are outlined to protect those same individuals. What are we really opposed to? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to? Mr. Whitehead?
Yeah, Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I'd just like to bring a couple of facts to your attention. I did get the report from the treasurer, the reports that were submitted to him by the Scenic Railway, and it summarized the activity from January 1st through September 1st of this year. Less than 1,000 passengers. That's less than 4 passengers a day. if you think you can have, first of all, you think that's doing any good for your tourism, I hope you look, elsewhere at tourism. But I don't know how you can sustain, even one job at 4 passengers a day. It would be good if they could generate additional revenue, but I think when they came to you back 6 years ago, 7 years ago, they were not proposing, storage as the way of getting the revenue. That's been a relatively recent development. And yet they did, I think, at that time, we're storing cars all around the country. And, perhaps you could have foreseen that something like that could happen. I don't know. But all I can say is 4 passengers a day isn't going to cut it. Thank you. Bye.
Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Yes, sir.
Kurt Austin, Chestertown. I caught Supervisor Dickinson speaking about all the conversations he's had with business people. I've had similar conversations with business people within the First Wilderness Corridor, which includes Chester and many other towns. And I haven't found a business person yet that would prefer the current railroad operation to a multi-use trail. And I would encourage Mr. Dickinson to speak to more business people about that. But the choice before the committee ultimately is between a bike trail, snowmobile trail, and as currently implemented, a car storage, a railroad car storage business. And I'm pretty sure which is best for the citizens of Warren County.
Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Wild from Queensbury. I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately. I am not in support of storing rail cars in the middle of the Adirondacks, but I'm confused. If I heard it correctly, Mr. Ellis brought this up prior to the last time the contract was signed. So to come out with a resolution now stating that you're against it, it almost appears as though we should have done something like that in 2015 or whenever the date was we signed the last contract. So in effect, this almost seems like a knee-jerk reaction by the board over something that we should have anticipated earlier. So my only comment is as we go forward, we need to be careful with consequences of our decisions. And this appears to be one of those where we have unforeseen consequences and have just not foreseen what the ultimate impact was going to be. So I just implore the board to try to work a little bit harder on that. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? There being none, we'll move on to the board. Before we begin discussion of resolutions, are there any roll call requests?
Mr. Chairman.
First roll call requests. Are there any roll call requests? Supervisor Sieber?
Yes, I would like to request a roll call on 382 and 381.
382 and 381.
426.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Garrity?
Roll call request on 426.
Roll call request on 426.
381, 382.
Okay. Any other roll call requests, Mr. Thomas?
I don't have I have a question first. On if somebody can explain it to me, maybe I won't have a roll call vote, but Resolution 470, I see each senior transportation contract has been reduced by $50. I know $50 is not a lot of money, but
470, which one?
370, right?
370?
370?
No, there's no.
No.
Wow. I wrote down the wrong number.
Yeah, it was last meeting.
There's one in here anyway. It's the resolution to do with the Office for the Aging, and it's a reimbursement of federal funds back to to the towns that provide senior transportation. And I see each contract had been reduced $50, and I was just wondering why that was the case, what the reason is.
Does anyone have an answer to that question?
I don't.
No?
Mary.
Mary?
In committee.
Office of the Aging had to add one organization, so to keep their budget the same, they reduced all the other organizations by $50.
Okay. What organization did they add?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Town of Wells.
Excuse me? Mr. Leggett?
Town of Wells?
Wells.
Yep, okay.
407.
407.
407.
I'm dyslexic.
407
I'm dyslexic.
is the resolution.
But anyways, if that's the explanation, I don't need a roll call on it.
Okay. Any other roll call requests at this time? There being none, I'll open it up to the floor. Mr. Dickinson.
I'd like to respond to a couple of public comments.
And that's your right.
Okay. It's a pretty well-known fact that the passenger trains don't generally make any money. That includes the Amtrak. If you've ever ridden Amtrak anywhere, especially from Fort Edward to Montreal, when a freight train comes, the passenger train pulls off the tracks, lets them go by. Sometimes it can be 10, 15 minutes, sometimes it can be 10 times that. But freight train takes precedent because they make the money. So I'm not surprised in the least that they've been unable to make any money with this little tourist train. I think they provide a service that some people enjoy, and I give them credit for continuing to do that while they're bleeding money. But the fact of the matter is they're in business, and storing cars and doing freight is really what they need to do if they're going to make any money and turn our investment into a profit. And again, they're partners. I don't understand why we're at loggerheads with them. Thank you.
Any other discussion on 426? Mr. Garrity.
Yeah, I'm going to vote against 426, and my reasons are, I'm not sitting here saying I think storage of cars is the best use of the tracks. But this gentleman purchased those tracks, they're his tracks, and he should be allowed to do what he wants with those tracks. And I think what we're doing, we're taking away a chance for this gentleman to make revenue on something that he needs to do to even out his, maybe the poor performance of the passenger line. I've always been an advocate that we needed to get freight on that line. In my prior job, I handled freight in and out of International Papers Mill in Corinth, and I understand that the line will not make money as a passenger line. But having listened to complaints about the APA since 1972, it seems to me we're doing the same thing. This gentleman purchased the tracks, and now we're stepping in, and he's correct. In 2015, in all the conversations, maybe we didn't think that it would ever come to storing of cars, but all the conversations, you go back and read, he always mentions storage of cars on the tracks. So, you know, I don't think it's the best use, and, you know, I've had phone calls, and not a single call has come in saying, you know, you should allow this. But to me, it's about the principle. He purchased the tracks, not us. We could have purchased the tracks, but we didn't do that. And I also looked at the resolution passed by Essex County. It's not unanimous. It was almost 50-50 in Essex County. There's a lot of supervisors that voted against it. And I'm not voting against my colleagues. I'm voting against the principle that this gentleman purchased the tracks, and we're denying him the right to use the tracks the way he wants to. And there's nothing contractually that we can do. Maybe it's a feel-good resolution. We were on a call with the state. The state hasn't figured out how to stop the gentleman from using the tracks for this yet. I think we should wait for the state because it is in the Adirondack Park. But we're doing the same thing that I've listened to constituents for years now, since 1972, condemn the use of their own land in the Adirondack Park. So that's the reason why I'm going to vote against this resolution. wish he was hauling freight on the line from Tahalls versus having to store cars on this line to improve his economic viability. So I cannot support this. That's just my take on it. And I thought about it long and hard before I would make this kind of statement. So that's the way I feel.
Thank you. Any other discussion on 426? Mr. Merlino?
Yeah, my 2 cents is, we also got to understand there's 2 towns in Saratoga County that are partners with us. That's Hadley and that's Corinth. And the whole, they're partners with us, and we're making resolutions to stop something and hurting our partners also. I'm fully in support of this, and I've been working with railroad stuff since 1994 when we first started this, and there's a lot of work that goes into it and a lot of money, and people don't see it. We got 4 years left on this contract. I hear people how they're going to rust and they're going to do this if they store. Well, maybe we have 4 years to wait and then change it in 4 years. But right now, I think we're going against the contract the gentleman signed and that we signed. Thank you.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I just have one quick comment for Mr. Austin. I appreciate your input. Mr. Ellis has offered to cohabitate the rail line and suggested that we investigate putting a bike trail in there right away. So I don't see the bicyclists and hikers' point. If he's willing to do that, they should do what we did and partner with them and get something going in that avenue if that's really what they want. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment? Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I would just like to make a couple comments. Back when I was first on the board, back in, I'm not sure what year it was, but it was 04, 05, Warren County had an opportunity to purchase this line with the Open Space Institute, and at that time, the board determined that it was not in the county's interest to purchase that line. So just a little history. I'd like to echo what Justin Gagnon said to us. I've lived in Stony Creek all my life. I know what it is to eke out a living, and go from job to job and do construction and contracting. And, tourism's fine, but, in the winter, it gets cold and you get hungry and people have to pay their taxes. And I think any jobs that can be provided is definitely a benefit to Johnsburg, Stony Creek, and Thurman, and all the rest of us in Corinth. One other thing I'd like to point out is of that $5.5 million in maintenance that Iowa Pacific has provided to this line, the county is using $441,000 of that as match for grants that we've received from the state. So basically, they've paid the 50% that the towns or whoever got the grant would have to pay. So that's, kind of like free money in some sense. And I would like to echo also, I think the rail trail, I think that's a doable idea. I think, and parts of it could be done soon. I mean, there's definitely challenges in doing the whole thing, but that's my comment.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I want to point out a couple things, and one of them is that the Finance Committee's resolution talked about breaches of the contract. This resolution is not saying that we are opposing Snicker or their operation of the tourist train, which apparently isn't, everyone is acknowledging it's not doing well. So I think over the next 3 years, we need to start thinking about what our long-term plan is for this corridor. And I think it's too bad that the county didn't think it was a good idea back in 2004 to purchase that line. And also, at the time that we renewed this contract, I requested that we renegotiate the terms, knowing that he, it sounds like he had a plan. I didn't think that that was really something he was going to continue pursuing. I went back to the minutes and tried to get a better sense, but, that's neither here nor there. But we received counsel at the time that we couldn't renegotiate, and so we went forward and and renewed the contract under the exact same terms. And Mr. Wild is right that we probably should have addressed it in March of 2016, but that doesn't mean that we should sit by silently now, because doing so is only going to compound the problem. They want to bring in 2,000 cars. And in 3 years, what are we going to do with 2,000 cars sitting up there? And I hope that we can work with our partners, including Saratoga North Creek, Corinth, and come up with some successful way to bring in revenue. But right now, I'm going to go on record supporting this and opposing storage of rail cars in the Adirondacks.
Supervisor McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to throw my 2 cents out here. I spoke to this during committee, but you know, the matter of storage of these container cars, while it was articulated that it was an interest by Mr. Ellis almost 2 years ago, there were concerns that I didn't have that I now do have. That's what happens over the course of almost 2 years. That's a good thing, in my opinion. We've been good partners. We have a contract, and we have abided by that contract in good faith. We didn't take any drastic measures when payments were late, when these tourist trains were abruptly canceled. These things happen. Are we happy about it? No. But we were good. We stood by you guys. You know, I look at this concept of partnership, and again, we have partnerships with municipalities in Saratoga County. I can't imagine the residents of Saratoga County would want anything to do with storage cars. I really can't. And because it's not in their backyard, then, okay, well, let's throw it up in Essex County, you know, it's their track, okay. That's fine. We can't stop this from happening, okay? Let's make that clear. We do have a contract, but we don't have to like this. And I don't like this. I don't like that in other parts of the country. I see a similar situation in Chicago where, oh, I'm going to store some cars here, and you can compensate me if we don't. It's a very, very similar message, and I just kind of feel like I'm bullied a little bit. I don't appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Montesi, Supervisor Montesi.
The one question that I have, maybe our attorney could answer it for us, is if we have a contract and the contract is due in 4 or 5 years, if we allowed the trains, the storage of the tanker cars or the storage of rail cars on his track, at the end of 4 years or 5 years when we cancel the contract, if we did, would he still be able to maintain them on his property?
I believe Mr. Ellis responded to that at the Public Works meeting. He said that if he should cease being the operator on the line, that he would discontinue the storage facility. I believe that is a correct statement. Who's on the record as saying that?
Thank you.
Mr. Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in front of us is a resolution, number 426, that says, resolved that the Warren County Board of Supervisors supports Essex County's opposition to the storage of tanker cars in the Adirondack Park, particularly in Essex County. That's what we're voting on here today. It's being framed as a vote in opposition to storage in the Adirondacks is a vote against the Saratoga North Creek Railroad. I don't like being put in a position of where it's framed in that. I'm a supporter of the railroad. And as Justin had pointed out, it brings economic opportunity into our region. And it has a lot of potential. But as a town supervisor that has a comprehensive master plan and zoning laws in effect for them, and in a town that is struggling with enforcing some of those because it has been lax, especially when it comes on to junk cars. I can see down in the future where this could become an intractable problem. Also, being a town fully within the blue line and having to abide by those APA land use regs that Supervisor Garrity put out, whether you're for them or against them, you live with them. And you work with them. And it charts a course for the future of what we envision our Adirondacks and our home to be. You know, I'm born and raised as well in Chestertown. I did live 12 years out in Durango, Colorado, which has a very successful tourist train out there. Across the border from La Plata County is Rio Grande County with South Fork and a few others, and the not tanker cars, but all storage cars on that rail line have been an issue. And I've seen that through the early 2000s, and it perhaps still persists. It's a contentious issue. I will be voting in favor of this resolution with respect to our neighbors to the north. The town of Chester borders the town of Minerva and Essex County, and I do not want this to be seen that it is a vote against the railroad, but it is a vote to be able to comply with what our towns and region envision for the future.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Mr. Dickinson.
I think some of us are a little confused here. We don't have the right to allow them or not allow them to put these cars there. Our contract with them is for passage through Warren County. They're not stored in Warren County. We're really overstepping ourselves here with this whole thing. He has a legal right to do what he did, obviously, because the cars are there. The issue is with the APA, if at all. And I'm not sure he has an issue with the APA. So, again, it goes back to being a good partner. I don't want to be a bad partner and cast aspersions on some enterprise they're entering into legally on behalf of someone else. So I'm definitely not voting for this if you haven't figured that out already.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Supervisor McDevitt?
Yes, I'm going to vote for the resolution. I think a couple of observations. We heard an elected official from the town of Minerva at our last session that spoke rather aggressively about the storage of these cars. What do you think about the idea of taking some of these cars and kind of putting them up near the Sagamore, Mr. Chairman, to kind of maybe blocking some of that beautiful Lake George vision? Why don't we take some of these cars, Supervisor Dickinson, and let's find out a solution to park them in Lake George? Why don't we do that? Or Lake Luzerne?
Well, we made the unfortunate mistake.
No, excuse me, gentlemen, Mr. Dickinson, please. Mr. McDevitt has the floor.
But the bottom line is, what this is really saying is, if you live there, you don't want it. If you're interested in providing revenue and occupancy tax for your community and our communities, you're not going to let them into Lake George, and I don't think the Sagamore would appreciate, that kind of effort. So the gentleman, the elected official from Minerva, the gentleman that lives there, the gentleman that has to be on the receiving end of this issue, he said, do not do this, okay? Yet we have people on this board, they don't live there, and it's all okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Thomas, Supervisor Thomas.
Yes, I would just like to point out for Supervisor McDevitt that there's not a rail line at the Sagamore or in Lake George. So it'd be kind of hard to get one of them cars there.
No, okay.
Mr. McDevitt, please, Mr. Thomas had the floor. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Mr. Beatty, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I've been sitting here listening to all the opinions and so forth, and I can see both sides of the issue. I thank Mr. Ellis for coming last week to the committee. I will be very frank, and I always am very honest. I was disappointed when people from the public, people from the ADA, all these agencies got up to speak, and Mr. Ellis determined that he didn't want to hear the public input. Went in the coffee room, sat and had a cup of coffee. I found that disrespectful. Oftentimes, I don't want to hear certain things, but I sit and I listen. And I think that indicated to me a rather arrogant position. And I was turned off by it. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Ellis, that bothered me. So I stated at that meeting, and I'll state it again, I am in support of this. I also am a railroad fan, and I understand the business implications of of him having may or may not the legal right. I guess other agencies will maybe be challenging this legally. That's not for me. I'm not part of the law firm of Dickinson and Dickinson. So I am in support of this. I feel the Adirondacks is one. Our neighbors to the north are us, and we are them. And I cannot, in all consciousness, leave them, hang them out to dry. So that's my position, and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Mr. Brock, Supervisor Brock.
Yeah, again, I'm listening to all of this, and it occurs to me that a partnership only works when people voluntarily do what the other one wants them to do. Or, when you work together in both interests. It doesn't work very well, or it's symptomatic of a not very good relationship when one partner does something you don't want them to do and then relies on the legal argument that I can do it anyway. That's symptomatic of a really bad partnership. And the long-term implications of that are probably in 4 years, you're going to have a lot of people up here saying, get somebody else that's more viable. So, Mr. Ellis, you really should think about what you're doing, because you're really damaging the life of this partnership that we have, and relying on, well, I can do it anyway, is not the way to do it.
Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? There being no one, I'm going to close the the board discussion regarding resolution number 426. Any discussion on any other resolutions? Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a discussion on two resolutions. I'd like to do them separately if possible. The first one is on 381, and Chairman Dickinson, I just have a quick question. When did 398 group say that they were not going to host the American Musical Festival for the Marshall Tucker Band? When did they cancel out?
Sometime midsummer, well before it, and was picked up by another music advocacy, and he simply asked for the money they were getting.
So it was midsummer. And before this comes off, as I'm not a country fan, I like country music. And I heard that we had a great crowd for the Marshall Tucker Band, so that's wonderful. My concern, though, with this resolution, and I'll be voting no on it, is because, and Dennis, I'll be voting no on it because September 15th, we had a full board meeting. And as these things come up, I think it's appropriate to bring them up at a full board meeting, even if it has to come off the floor to change the funding and to the entity that it's going to. We're in October, and we're now approving $2,000 to go back to an organization, not the 398 group, but the group that stepped in to Improv Records for $2,000. I get it's only $2,000, and I get it's from OCTAX. But my issue here is I think we could have discussed it at the full board meeting in September. I also am very concerned about the number of resolutions we're ratifying. Today in your packets, we have 392, 393, 396, 397, 498, 413. They're all being ratified. While this one doesn't say it's being ratified, we are doing something after the fact. I think there's a better process and a better way that we can bring this information forward. So for $2,000 to go back to to a different organization when it did have the opportunity to come forward before today to make that change, that's why I'm going to vote no on that particular resolution.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on 381, Supervisor Dickinson?
In response to that, I approve this transfer of money. We put $2,000 down on the table, and we demanded that the Marshall Tucker Band come and play at the festival area. Whether it's done by promoter A or promoter B is irrelevant to that. I don't really understand your concern. I don't know what the discussion would have been about. We got the Marshall Tucker Band by promoter A, and he dropped out. Promoter B picked up the ropes and continued on and brought the Marshall Tucker Band here. I was there for that event and had a very good turnout. So I don't understand what your concern is.
Okay.
May I respond?
Supervisor Sieber, of course.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson, it's that as a board, we have weighted votes. We come to this meeting every single month and talk about resolutions that are before us, but as a committee, it's one vote. The committee, while you approved it single-handedly, I obviously eventually went to your committee. It was after the fact. All I'm saying is the things that could be addressed without having to go back and do it later, it would be nice if those things, including all those other resolutions that are being ratified, we make a bigger effort as a board to be aware of those. And I'm at fault with that too. I think that we could do a better job at looking at all of the different contracts, specifically when we're using taxpayer money. And are you still listening to me? Or are you just
No, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, no, you should please be speaking to the chair as well. Speak at and through the chair. It's not a time for a sidebar debate. I appreciate it.
You won't like my next comments then, but okay. Mr. Chairman, it's simply that I believe that we have an opportunity with many different resolutions to bring them to the board ahead of time, to committees, and this is just one example amongst many.
I understand. And Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, though, I remember when this was brought in front of the committee, and I don't know which committee, but I remember when the mayor brought this event in front of us. And it seems to me like, at the time, we approved it. It seems to me right now, there wasn't another committee meeting since the event to approve it. And I think that's the issue, if I understand it, Supervisor Seaver. The issue is we should have gone back to committee first and then voted to change where the money went. I think it was approved at committee, but when the gentleman backed out, I'm not familiar with either one of these things, but he backed out, so we should have really gone back and had a committee in this case. And I think Supervisor Dickinson felt that because there was 2,000, the money was already allocated, it was the name of the promoter, and you authorized to bring this forward, correct? Because you didn't have a committee meeting? Right. I think that's the case. And I understand where you're coming from too, that, all that. But I think that's the case with this one, because I remember this being discussed. I don't remember this group being the ones to get the money. I think it's a change of group, as Supervisor Dickinson said.
Wow. Supervisor Montesi.
Just a clarification, I think Kevin is right. That was at a meeting of the Park Operations Management.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes.
And that was when Mayor Blaze made that comment that they wouldn't be there. So, I mean, that was the committee that it started with.
Supervisor Merlino.
I was just going to mention, that was Mayor Blaze told us that, and then we decided, then he got another one that came up to take its place. So it's not that we lost 2,000, it's just one got the money back and the other one paid for the night anyway. So, but my one point is, and I believe Rachel is on a right track, because sometimes this happens, and it's just happened today on 4/26. This wasn't brought to a committee. This was made up, give us a new resolution, and we debated it here instead of going back to committee. So that resolution should be tabled and go back to committee.
Any other discussion on 381? Mr. Dickinson.
I've been on this board for 10 years. I know the rules, regulations, and the requirements and the committee thing. I am a chairman of a committee, and I took the responsibility and made the executive decision to do this, and I still don't see what the problem is. We ended up with the same ban regardless of who brought it here, and that's what we paid for it.
Any other, no other further discussion? Happy as the head that wears the crown, right? Okay, thank you. 381, I'll close discussion at 381. Any discussion on any other resolutions? Supervisor Seaver?
Mr. Chairman, now, I had intended to direct some of these comments to Supervisor Dickinson, but as directed, I'll go directly through you, Mr. Chairman.
Much appreciated.
This is not a personal attack to Supervisor Dickinson. I don't believe in personal attacks. What I'd like to talk about, though, is the process. So I'm glad that Supervisor Dickinson had an opportunity to talk about how long he's been on the board and the opportunities in terms of being a chairman and how powerful, really, that is in particular committees. And in this instance, the occupancy committee. I know my viewpoint is not a popular viewpoint. I don't expect any of you to jump up and follow, this line today and vote no with me. But I am bringing it up because I'm concerned about the process. So, Mr. Chairman, we are awarding 2018 occupancy tax awards in October. It is different than what we've done in the past. As Supervisor Dickinson brought up, it is drastically different. Over the 4 years I've been on the board, I've enjoyed the opportunity to attend the occupancy tax meetings. I've enjoyed seeing different entities here, new entities asking for an opportunity for funding, to talk about the different changes that are in front of us, to describe why they're worthy of that funding, to look at opportunities that perhaps there is no other funding for. But as a group, we did that. I used to be a member, Mr. Chairman, of the Occupancy Tax Committee. I am no longer. So at the meeting during our Occupancy Tax Committee meeting, which was brief, and I would also note that if meetings were scheduled monthly for all of our committees, perhaps some of these things could be discussed, if not an opportunity at the full board meeting. But I recognize our meeting schedule is very busy. That being said, I voiced my concern as a non-member of the Occupancy Tax Committee, Mr. Chairman. What I did is I stood up and I asked if we would see applications from all of these entities. I have not seen those applications. So in the spirit of not seeing things that we're told we would see, I'd ask for it to be tabled. However, I'm not, because I know I wouldn't have that support. But I think it came as a surprise to many members of the OCTAX committee, but many other members of the Board of Supervisors. While I feel many of these organizations are worthy applicants, I'm not sitting here debating whether or not they deserve the funding, because I've done that in an occupancy tax meeting as a committee member in front of the public and talked about why or why not those applications would warrant that funding. But we don't have that chance this year. It's presented to us as a resolution, and it will go to our budget officer and be placed in the budget for next year. And for me to oppose that, I would then have to vote no to the whole budget. But just a few years ago, Supervisor Brock and I talked about our concerns that we had about the process with the budget and how we felt like it was a closed-door process. And what did this board do in return? Our budget officer, Frank Thomas, made sure that we changed policies, that we asked, as Supervisor Frazier brought up today, that our employees come, our department heads, to our committee meetings and talk about how they're going to spend money and why they want it. We didn't get a chance to vote on it, but we did get it for information, and it became a very interactive process. The schedule of all budget meetings are now available to us if we ask for them to be able to go to meetings. I haven't had anyone tell me, no, I can't come to their budget meeting. Supervisor Thomas went so far as this year to take the performance work plans, which was, again, conversation last year about how are we giving out raises. But this year he did it based on performance reviews. This year we had our county administrator fully support and lead the efforts in that performance evaluation process. Because we spoke up about the process, we made it better. I don't think that this process is as good as it could get. But I recognize that Supervisor Dickinson has worked very hard with members of the public and different supervisors. I'm not one of them he's worked with on it because I'm not on the committee and I have an opposing viewpoint. I don't believe that the process was followed here. I think it was a quick change. I don't think that the majority of us had an opportunity to weigh in on the occupancy tax. And like I said, I don't expect all of you to support me on this. But I do believe that we have a better process that we could be utilizing. And as it relates to the Lake George CVB, I love the results we're getting from Kristen. I'm glad to hear that we're going to give them more money. But today I learned that. I didn't learn that at our OCTAX committee meeting. When I asked what was happening with that, I was just told it wasn't being renewed and it was being renegotiated. I'm glad that we're going to support the Civic Center, but I didn't learn that at the OCTAX committee meeting. I learned it here today. So I think that oftentimes there are a few people making a lot of big decisions, and I think I don't know the quote you just used, Supervisor Conover, but something about power with a crown. And I am discouraged to see that this process is taking place here today in the manner that it is. I would hope you would vote no with me on this, for table it, put it back to committee, ask to see the applications, ask to see how the money's going to be spent in these 8 organizations that total $198,000. But I am a fan of the proposal through for a designated marketing organization. But we haven't heard that as a full board. I guess we haven't invited them in, but again, I'm not the committee chair that controls that. So, Mr. Chairman, if you could please convey to Mr. Dickinson, this is not a personal attack. This is about process. I very much like Mr. Dickinson. Thank you.
How about that? Any further discussion on the resolution 382? Mr. Dickinson?
I'd like to respond. It's like having a conversation with my wife.
That's why we're here.
I disagree wholeheartedly with everything you said, Rachel. Part of my workload was to revamp occupancy tax, and this is one key part of it. We would have a meeting of all of us and distribute money, and truthfully, there's only 2 tourism supervisors on this 20-member board. They would bring in applications from Johnsburg that I knew nothing about. I decided it was not an effective way to do it. And in that, I went through all the applications we have, and I picked out 8 very successful events that, except for maybe the wine festival, have been repeatedly supported by this board. And I put them on a list. And I said, all right, we're going to fund through the county these 8 things. And we're going to do it as long as they're successful every year. This is the first step. You're authorizing agreements for the distribution of money. You're not distributing the money. The next step is, if we pass it, which I hope we do, I will contact all 8 of these members and tell them what the rules and regulations are. And in that, we will receive applications, as they've done every year, showing what they hope to do and what they hope to gain. So we haven't short-circuited anything, and we haven't denied this board the opportunity to review any of these things. If we pass it today, I'll contact them, and you'll get your applications, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to review it before we give the money away. And that's the point of it, is every one of these applications will be reviewed every year internally, and if they're deemed by the committee to still be successful, we'll continue this and we'll roll it over. And you will get the applications and the opportunity, and there's a reason why you aren't on the OCTAX board.
Supervisor Bramer?
I'll be quick. I mean, Supervisor Dickinson's, what he just said is completely backwards. We should have their applications in hand first. What if they don't, what if Americade doesn't need, I know they will, but.
You don't give them the money.
50,000 this year. Well, of course they're going to apply for 50,000 once we tell them we're gonna give them 50,000. And the other thing I want to say is, I do not appreciate Supervisor Dickinson just declaring that we're giving 300,000 to the CVB. That proposal has not come through the committee or the board yet, and we should really be debating that together instead of only the 2 tourism people making that decision.
Any further discussion on Resolution 382? Matt McDonald, Supervisor McDonald?
Whole lot going on right now. Just want to I think everyone's thinking it. Just want to say it, but in all sincerity, I think the budget for what money is going to be going to the Civic Center, to the CVB, et cetera, that's not part of the resolutions today, as far as I know. Is that correct? So that we will have a chance to vet that properly during the budget process. So let's just take a deep breath, guys. All right. That's all.
I like that. I like that. We're going to make you board whip or something. Anyone else wish to discuss 382? Supervisor Sieber?
Thank you. What is for Supervisor McDonald, I'm not that worked up. Why not then change the resolution to just say 198,000 to be determined, upon applications that will be reviewed by the committee? That's what we've always done. While we haven't had a number there, we've always looked at the applications and determined on a scoring sheet, which Supervisor Molino and the tourism department did a great job last year having a scoring sheet that we used. For those of us in that room debating that, we know how long it took us and how hard we worked on it. I'm unclear why we're giving entities money, and again, I'm not saying it's not worthy, I'm talking about the process. So, is there a way that I could make a motion to just do 198,000? Or to table the resolution until we see the applications, and then at least we can make the determination based on the applications, but as noted, I will
You can
only be
advance
here
an amendment.
talking about it.
You can advance an amendment on the resolution, of course.
I would second that amendment.
That amendment, and the amendment would be to have the resolution read as how?
That there be $198,000 under the occupancy tax awards to be determined at a later date upon an application and discussion of the occupancy tax committee.
You heard the amendment to the resolution. Are we good with that amendment from the staff? We are. And we have a second to that from Supervisor Bramer?
Yes.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Dickinson.
I put a lot of effort into this. It's not been easy. These organizations are very profitable to Warren County. All 8 of them are very profitable to Warren County. These are the star events. I don't understand what Supervisor Siebert's problem with this is. Americade's been around forever. It's been extremely successful. The newest venue there is Sasha's Wine Tasting. It's been extremely successful. It's blown up in her face. It's almost more than she can handle. She does a great job with it. I don't understand. What we're doing is making a commitment for that money for the coming year. And next year, we'll look at it again and do it again. I don't understand what the problem is here. I don't want to pass some wishy-washy $198,000 to be distributed later. These people want to know if they're getting this money or not. These people are working as we speak to bring all their participants here next summer. This isn't something they start the Saturday before they have the event. They're working on it now. So I want to make a commitment to these 8 people that we are going to support their event.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a lot of this is coming up because of process. As an occupancy tax committee member, it was put in front of us, the slate of 8 for approval. There was no input, and I think we're paying the consequences for short-circuiting that process right now. I will agree with Supervisor Dickinson that these are the top 8. They were funded last year. They've been funded in previous years as well. They are worthy of the county-wide appropriations. I do believe that the appropriations that the county has is usually $175,000. So we've gone up a little bit. Last year, as a committee, we sat and we listened to a lot of proposals, and we had $175,000 to distribute. We came out of that meeting distributing $285,000. So I will not support this amendment. I do support Ms. Siebert's speaking to the value of doing process, though, for this and the transparency when it comes into dispersing public funds.
Let's, Mr. Dickinson.
We're not. Are you guys listening to me? We're not short-circuiting anything. We're setting this money aside for these 8 groups. We're going to send invitations out to them to send in applications. We're going to review the applications. And if for some reason we don't want to, we don't fund them. Just like anything else. It's done every year. But these are the 8 we're concentrating on. We're not looking at anything that's not in here on these 8. It's not coming to the county.
We'll take one more.
Can I just I do think
Supervisor Garrett.
I do think these 8 were chosen already to send out applications. I mean, I saw something on a piece of paper where these 8 events were chosen for that money, correct, Craig?
I'm on the committee, and I'm not aware of the process.
Oh, okay, because I thought I saw something where, weren't these done in committee?
They were.
That's how they got here.
They were presented in front of the committee, and I do believe the committee passed it on. That's why it's in front of the board now.
It wouldn't be here if it didn't go.
No, I mean, I thought this was done through committee, honestly. I mean, I saw some piece of paper where these 8 events were listed and the amount of money was listed against them.
It was done through the committee, and we discussed the 8. I listed them for everybody in the committee meeting.
That's what I thought, but I could have been.
I'm for an open dialogue and debate, if you will, and I'll be here till midnight if that's what you choose. But I just would ask that the folks not repeat themselves. I will come back to you. Those are our rules. So, Ms. Siebert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, without repeating myself, this is why we're here having this discussion today. It was pushed through at a committee meeting with very little discussion or time allotted for such discussions.
I think you've covered that ground.
Mr. Chairman,
I think you've covered.
I'm not through, however.
Okay.
I have no problem with withdrawing the amendment if that pleases the board. My issue is that when I asked if we would see applications, I was told yes. Now we are asked to vote on something without seeing any application. To Mr. Dickinson's point, that these people are depending on their money, how can then we determine later, after we approve this resolution, that once we see the applications, that perhaps it doesn't warrant that amount of money, depending on what their applications say? I trust the applications will be fantastic, but I don't know that sitting here today making this resolution. So in one breath, we want to move forward and let them know they're getting the money, but in another, don't worry, you can see the application and vote no. This is done by just a few people. We are a full board, and all of us carry very different weighted votes. There should have been more time allotted.
We voted on the amendment, yeah. All right. I'd at least like to center the discussion on the amendment, specifically the amendment of the language. If there's any discussion on the amendment as advanced with the wording as proposed, then the wording is?
Essentially, it's removing this Schedule A from Resolution 382 and changing it to indicate that there's a total of $198,000 to be given, and that those disbursements will be determined by the Occupancy Tax Committee based on applications received.
Does everyone understand the amendment? Okay, that's what we need to center the discussion on, Mr. Dickinson.
That's the purpose of my amendment, of my resolution, not this amendment. I've listed the ones that we're going to consider so that they know we're going to consider them. I've allocated the amount of monies that they have asked for in the past. So now we have the money. If we pass my resolution, we have the money set aside, and we have a list of people that we're looking at. That does not mean that we are going to give them the money. That does not mean that we wouldn't look at, if somebody came in with another Americade proposal, I tell you right now, I'm going to look at it. That's not the point. The point is that this is the way I set it up. I set it up with these 8 events, and I figured out what they needed for money, and I want to set that aside, and then we'll do due process. We'll get applications, and we'll discuss each of the 8 in the committee.
I think everyone's clear on the process that you've established, and their concerns with the process. Mr. Leggett, Supervisor Leggett, do you have?
Yeah, just to be clear of the full resolution that's in front of us, resolved that the chairman of the board is authorized and directed to execute the agreements identified herein, that the funds will be expedited from Code, Tourism, Occupancy Tax, Special Events 198 to the schedule. We are voting on appropriating this schedule of funds to these events. That's my understanding.
If they meet the requirements. If Americade does not put in an application, Craig, they are not getting the $50,000.
Then the cart is before the horse.
I think it says that, but you're entitled to your opinion, of course, or your concern.
Then please explain.
You want to comment?
But doesn't it say in applicants listed attached to each agreement to be in the form approved by the county attorney and be further? So the form's going to come in, you have to approve it? Yes, no, I don't know.
We put that into every resolution.
Yeah, but it still has to be approved.
Right.
Okay, let's, if we could, Mr. Brock, Supervisor Brock, of course.
Yeah, as I recall last year, we had, Americade was given $45,000, is that correct? Correct. And then, the $5,000 was dispersed to other people, and I know Supervisor Dickinson was very upset with that. And I get the feeling that the money's being funneled so that occurrence doesn't occur again, so as to sort of center it. And I'm worried that unless we understand the underlying reason, you're going to have this kind of argument, because people don't really, it seems like we're just putting the cart before the horse.
Let's, Supervisor Dickinson.
In my absence, You all decided to shaft them for $5,000 on a $50,000 application that brings in $30 million to Warren County. You explained to me the logic of that, Jim, and I'll agree with you. Fortunately, Mr. Merlino stepped up because part of the event took place in in Luzerne, and he stepped up and put the 5,000. Otherwise, I would have given him the 5,000.
Can I quickly, I don't disagree with you.
Please speak to the chair. Speak through the chair. I appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Brock.
I don't disagree with you with the reasoning for, I thought it was wrong that they cut the thing, but I think that's what you're trying to avoid is that same scenario again.
Let's, if we could, is it all right with everyone? Can we at least get past the amendment? Can we at least vote on the proposed amendment? Is that, Mr. McDevitt, with your patience?
I
would
highly suggest that.
Thank you. All right. Let's have, I think we could do this hopefully with a show of hands. If not, we'll go to a roll call. All those in favor of the amendment as advanced, please signify by raising your hand.
Which amendment are you talking about?
All those opposed to the amendment as advanced, raise your hand. We're going to need.
It's a weighted vote, so you're going to need a roll.
We're going to need a roll call. So let's call the roll.
So we're voting on the amendment to Resolution 382, as previously stated. That's to remove the Schedule A, indicate that there's a total of $198,000 available, and that disbursements will be, allocations will be determined at a later date by the Occupancy Tax Committee based on a review of applications received. Mr. Gerard? No. Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
That'd be no.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Since I'm on one of the boards, the Warren County Safe and Quality Bicycle Organization, that is under consideration for allocation of part of this, I'm just going to recuse.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
And Chairman Conover?
No.
It does fail. There were 276 votes in favor, 603 against, and 36 absent, 85 not voting.
All
So
right.
the amendment fails.
The amendment fails. Back on Resolution 382, is there any further discussion on 382? There
Yes,
being none,
thank you.
That will be a roll call vote, and if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to close this discussion on 382. Is there any discussion on any other resolutions? There being no other discussion on other resolutions, I'll close that discussion on resolutions, on proposed resolutions, and we can move on to voting on resolutions.
Resolution 377, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 378, amending Warren County budget for 2017. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 381, amending Resolution 555 of 2016, authorizing agreements with certain applicants for disbursement of 2017 occupancy tax revenues. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 382, authorizing agreements with certain applicants for disbursement of 2018 occupancy tax revenues. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Recuse.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 412, amending table of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan for 2017. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 416, increasing capital project H372, First Wilderness Plan implementation. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 417, establishing capital project H374, Warrensburg Fuel Farm. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 422, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Motor Fuel Farm Reserve Fund. Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
And Resolution 426, opposing storage of tanker cars in the Adirondacks. Mr. Gerard?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Tough one, but I have to vote no on this one.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
That resolution does pass. There was a vote in favor of 652, 312 against, and 36 absent.
What were the results? Amanda?
There's 652 votes in favor, so it did pass.
Thank you.
And we wanted to vote on the collective.
348 again.
All right. Now we need a vote on the collective motion on to approve resolutions. Mr. Gerard, second. Second, Mr. Sokol, thank you. All in favor of approving the resolutions, the balance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now I'd like to offer privilege of the floor to anyone in the audience wishing to address the board at this time. There being no one wishing to address the board at this time, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Ms. Frazier on the motion, Mr. Dickinson on the second. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.